So I'd like to introduce Sanjay here. Most of you know him because he does fit our model of collaborating. How many companies are you collaborating with? Like 10? I mean, it's really, he's been here for a little bit over a year. He's a tremendous collaborator. He's a vast resource. Whenever I sit down and talk to Sanjay, I learn 3 or 5 takeaway items. He's got. I'm going to go over a little bit some of his experience, but he is a vast resource here. We're so lucky to have him here on site. And as we look through moving forward with the companies, we are looking for, just go off track for a second, 2 companies in the new year if somebody in the room wants to present. But we do want to expose companies so that if there is collaboration, you kind of know what everyone's doing in your neighborhood. So briefly, Sanjay obtained his PhD in medical physiology from the University of Ottawa, completed his postdoctorate training in Japan and Switzerland. Sanjay is a fellow of the American College of Cardiology and also an adjunct professor at Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine. Sanjay has over 25 years of global healthcare and entrepreneurial experience in startups, biotech, large pharma, including 10 years at Johnson & Johnson family of companies, including the position of VP, R&D Pharmaceuticals, Asia Pacific, and Japan. In 2010, Sanjay successfully transitioned from an R&D executive to president and CEO of a commercial stage company in regenerative medicine. He started VIAS Partners, I'm saying it right, okay, because I do butcher words, in 2013 to take his diverse experiences in global network to partner with entrepreneurs and companies to advance their business concepts. Sanjay opened his lab here in the summer of 2018, so very happy to have you here. I'd like to introduce Sanjay, Vantra, and VIAS. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. There are some seats here. Please feel free to make this comfortable. I'm not giving a lecture. This is more of a conversation than anything else. It's a real pleasure to be able to introduce our company, VIAS Partners. And what I'm going to do today is 4 things. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my background, because it's germane to how we got here and to the work that we're doing at the Biotech Center. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our team and how we collaborate and the things that we're doing. This morning I came with 2 or 3 random ideas. I don't know exactly why, but I'm going to share them with you. And then lastly, for those of you who watched the preamble video, I said that I would leave you with 5 things. 5 things that I've learned in my career or traits that I've come across that really stand out. And I'm going to share those 5 things with you. And then at the end of this 10 or 15 minutes, I hope you'll leave with an idea or a trait or an inspiration or an idea that will help you in your career and in your future. So does that sound like a reasonable plan? So as Lou mentioned, I lived in a lot of different places. I was born in India, grew up in Canada, and like any good Indian kid, I lived at home forever and stayed in school forever. And as I was finishing my PhD, I started to travel and go to conferences around the world, and I realized that the world was a pretty big place and that there were people from different parts of the world doing science and exchanging ideas and collaborations. And so I was at a conference and I met a group of Japanese scientists, and in this meeting they were sort of sitting to the side, and I went over to them and I complimented one of the young fellows on his poster presentation. And over the course of that night, they invited me into their group, I kid you not, and we were doing kampai and drinking beer. And the senior person there invited me to do a postdoc in his lab. So I left Ottawa and my parents' basement to move to Sapporo, Japan to do my first postdoc. And then I had the opportunity to do my second postdoc in Switzerland, working with a very well-regarded professor who was about to retire. So I had the honor to be his last postdoctoral fellow before he retired. I worked for an Italian company, did a lot of travel to Europe, and when I moved to the United States, I worked in a couple of startups, and I also spent, as Lou said, 10 years at J&J. Now, the graphs or the flags are interesting, but this is a little bit more fun, so I have a challenge. For the next speaker, whoever does the next talk, you have to have at least one funny photo of yourself, and if you look at me here with the bad hair and the unibrow, I'm sure that's going to probably top the cake. So please, let's keep this with funny photos for everyone. So when I left J&J, I made a conscious decision to return to being an entrepreneur. As much as I love the comfort and stability of a big company, I miss the ability to make decisions and move quickly and think freely. And so when we started our company, our goal was really to work with people we liked, with technologies that we understood, and to do ways that were very customer-facing, whether it was to the physician or the patient. So we weren't doing long-term development, but more things closer to commercialization. And the area that we focus in is listed on this slide. So these are all cash pay areas, basically. So these are where a patient would pay for a procedure, and we would sell something to a doctor. I've been the CEO of a couple of companies in this category, and what's interesting is there's no accounts receivable. You're not dealing with insurance companies or payers or 90-day terms with hospitals. It's all cash pay. So if you want to see how your business is doing, you can go to your Wells Fargo account and look at your credit card swipes. It's all a cash pay industry. So it's a very different kind of medicine. Having said that, I enjoy it because it's very real and very fast, and there's a lot of innovation in technology. I've also realized that if I leave this area and start doing other things, either I get frustrated or lose money. So it's a motto in my life to focus on those things that you get to be pretty good at and try to stay in that area. Here are some photos of our lab. As Lou mentioned it, we opened it in July of last year. I was literally a one-person show. Walked in, I was very warmly welcomed, thanks to my friend Nick Hamill, who introduced me to Dr. Block, and to Lou. I felt very welcomed here. We met Loretta and Ray and many great people. And literally as a one-person company, self-funding the lab, I could be productive very quickly. And the reason that was the people down the hall and across the hall and the people that we met. So I was buying equipment on Amazon and websites, just buying stuff and didn't know how to set it up, but slowly we started to form a team. Liz couldn't be here today, but on the upper left is my medical technician, Liz Salucci. She's a rock star. She and I figured out many things from scratch. My son Justin, who's on the other side of that camera, has been working with me, and the young man has changed and grown so much in the time that he's been here in our lab. So I'm really proud to see Justin grow. It's my daughter Jaya on the upper right. She has worked 2 summers here in our lab, and she's a freshman at the University of Miami this year. So there's a lot here about family, and the technology that you see in these photos, they're all having to do with human blood. Our interest is taking blood and isolating components of the blood that are responsible for regenerating tissue. So what are those components in blood? We call it PRP, or platelet-rich plasma. How many of you have heard of PRP? Wow, almost a third of you, I would guess. So a lot of athletes have had it. Tiger Woods in his knee, Heinz Ward, Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry. This is used to regenerate and heal tissues, especially tendons and joints. It's used for osteoarthritis. And 8 or 9 years ago when we started VIAS Partners, we had the idea to take it and instead of putting it into a joint or addressing wounds, to put it into the skin. And so when you inject PRP into the skin, your body has this healing response. The platelets release growth factors, and you have a regeneration, and the side product, if you will, is a cosmesis, or a better aesthetic outcome. So your skin improves, you have less wrinkles. And by the way, if you inject it in your scalp, you grow hair, and that's my big bet in our lab. You've probably seen some things about hair that we're working on. So it's really kind of like a fertilizer of regenerative medicine. And it's autologous, it's safe, it comes from you. You can take someone's blood, spin it in a centrifuge, prepare it for re-injection, and inject it back to that patient in 40 minutes or so. So it's a very easy, minimally manipulated sort of product, and it's an FDA Class 2 medical device. So from a regulatory perspective, it's also a pretty straightforward pathway. And as I mentioned, platelets release growth factors. That's what we're interested in. We had a project with GE Healthcare, and we were struggling, and we wanted to understand growth factors. So I will be coming back to this in a moment. Just remember, platelets release growth factors, and it's those growth factors that are responsible for regenerating tissue. So here's my team. Amy may not appreciate that that's the photo I chose of her, but it actually speaks to something. It speaks to the fact that next to her is Bill Dixon and Frank Jones. And literally, we met here informally, and we seeded a company from the Biotech Center. My wife is running the company. It's called Jai Aesthetics, and it's in a collaboration with Green Street Pharma. Some of the Green Street people are here. They provided so much energy and enthusiasm into this collaboration. It's really been wonderful. This is our son Ash in the middle. He's a graphic design guy. He's created a lot of our marketing materials and brochures over the course of years. And for whatever project we lean on our family, we lean on our friends to work with us. And Nick Hebel has become a very good friend of mine. I really appreciate our collaboration. He's also co-located in our lab, so we get to see him all the time. And thanks to his contributions, we filed 2 provisional patents from work that we've done in our lab in the last year and a half. My favorite picture is probably the one on the bottom right, because that's me in the lab, on the line, working with my kids. For those of you who haven't had that opportunity, let me tell you, it's really something quite special. Really, really special. So here are some of the companies that we've collaborated with. Very proud of our relationships here, and maybe more important than the logos are the actual people. So in the middle, it's very honor for me to thank Dr. Syed. We were really struggling in a GE technology on measuring growth factors out of platelets. We couldn't make a decision. We didn't know if we should raise more money, what the data meant, what the clinical use was. And Dr. Syed, and together with Peace and people in his lab, they stepped up and performed ELISAs for us and generated tremendous data to help us understand what to do next with the technology. So please give a thanks to Bloomberg and Dr. Syed. There's Frank and I literally having a toast to a new business, and it really happened just with a shake of hands. His team is up on the left, and great collaborating with them on the transdermal masks. We love your energy and passion and your perspective that you bring to the project. On the bottom right here is my business partner, Tom O'Brien, who's in Dallas. What's great about working with Tom is he supports some of the work in our lab, but as we develop things and we get them FDA cleared, he has a 30-person sales force, so we can take technology and we can sell. Something a lot of PhD scientists and R&D people don't think about is that once you get through the basic lab work, the preclinicals, the clinical trials, and you commercialize, how are you going to sell? Will you build a sales force? Will you use distributors? Will you look to out-license your technology? So I'm very fortunate to have someone like Tom O'Brien, who is one of my best friends, but also a guy who can take our technology, and the minute we get an FDA clearance, we can put it in the hand of 30 sales reps on the street. Bob Christmas on the right, he's become a dear friend of ours and maybe one of the best connectors I know. So I see Bob in our lab figuring things out together with Avery. Okay, so this is random. I'm going to share with you a mistake that I made. And I left the slide blank because there's so many of them, I didn't know which would be a good one. This is a really good one. It's a really big mistake I made. So in 2015, I had the opportunity with a physician, friend of mine, and an investor to buy a company, to acquire an asset. It was a company that I was already the CEO of. So the three of us got together and we bought the technology from an older gentleman who was retiring and ready to sell it. And it's a classic case of the capital versus the control. So we needed the investor. He wrote the check, but he got control. So with his investment, which was the majority investment, he owned 71% of the company. And for about the first year, we were moving along quite well. We had created a new manufacturing line. We started selling. We were on a $4 million run rate, which means if you take your sales and multiply them out by 12 months, we would have sold $4 million. So the company was getting profitable. At the same time, the investor didn't want to invest any more money. And he didn't even really want to talk to me or negotiate or figure things out. And then I got to find out that he was under an SEC investigation in the Southern District of New York for fraud. And that was a big mistake that I made, to take an investor, to give up control without doing my homework or having the right investor. So in June of 16, I lost control of the company. But what's even worse than that is for the 3 months afterwards, I was miserable. I was unhappy. I was coming home and hanging off of a martini glass or a glass of red wine and thinking about how to get control of the company back. What did I do wrong? How could I win and correct this wrong? Retribution, solutions. And honestly, those 3 months were probably 3 months wasted in my life. So the advice I give you on this random point is that don't put good energy after bad, because generally nothing good comes from it. And I really lost 3 months of my life thinking about how to get something back that was just never meant to be. Joy. So my greatest joy is my wife right here, Amy. And this is not going to be some flash mob or We wake up every day together and have coffee. She actually brings me coffee pretty much every day. And then we go to the gym and come to the lab and we do our thing and we collaborate together in every which way. So that gives me great joy. You may not be able to read this from the back, but this is a very germane quote to this room. It's about collaboration. And the concept is, if I'm sitting with Lou and Lou has an idea and I have an idea, and we exchange those ideas, now we both have two ideas. So can you imagine getting a group of people with different backgrounds, different cultures, different experiences together, and you take those ideas and you multiply them together, and that's where the real innovation happens. So I really appreciate the idea of collaboration. So here are the 5 things. I promised you this. Gene asked me about 20 minutes ago if I was ready. I think I am. So look at this photo. How many of you have played a sport with a ball like golf, basketball, tennis? Pretty much everyone, I'm assuming. So what do these photos all have in common in terms of being successful? Is Ray here? Ray would probably know.
Follow through.
Who said it?
Follow through.
Follow through. Who said it? Luke? So keeping your eye on the ball is very important. And actually, I could go on about that, but the point I wanted to make is one of follow through. So look, anyone can hit a ball. Anyone can throw a ball. But in order to hit a ball right down the fairway, or a perfect forehand winner down the line, or a big line drive, think of where the position is when you're done. Usually your racket or bat or whatever is way out and back. And that's follow through. You can see it in all of these poses, right? Look at Steph Curry. Look where his hand is when he's finished shooting that basketball. And I take that analogy and I apply it to business. So those people in business who have follow through, to me, it means a lot. So think about being in a meeting or at a conference and you meet someone new. And he or she says, hey, let's meet, let's exchange ideas, let's collaborate. You may exchange a business card. Say you're in a conference or sitting here and someone brings up a study and you go, hey, I am aware of a study that was done by another group and I'll send you the reprint. Or let's meet for lunch. And how many times does that not happen? Not because you don't want it to happen, but just because we're all very busy and that's the real world. So I would leave you with this item. This is 5 of 5, or the first of 5, I guess, in that order. Think about follow through. And if you're in a situation or a place where you meet someone or say something or exchange an idea, your ability to follow through is very meaningful. I've asked Lou Casa to do 100 things, and he's responded to them 100 times. There's not been one time I've asked Lou something, a question, where he hasn't followed through. And that makes me know that not only is my voice important, but I know he's a guy I can count on. So think about that in your life, follow through. I've seen many companies, including companies that I've been part of, struggle for the lack of their ability to make a decision. So you have a lot of smart people, different points of view, people entrenched in their opinions, and they can't make a decision. And I would submit to you, sometimes that's worse than making the wrong decision. Because if you make the wrong decision, as long as it's informed and you're inclusive and trying to build on something, you can always redirect. But if you can't make a decision, sometimes you just can't go forward. And then other bad things happen around morale and motivation and frustration, going to committees and repeating that cycle and not being able to make decisions. So I really appreciate the trait of people and teams around the ability to make a decision. How many of you have had one of these tri-beam balances? A couple of you have worked with this before, right? Classic balance. I like it because the tri-beam for me represents 3 things. So data, emotion, and business. So as scientists, the data comes first. We have to look at the data. We have to understand how the studies were done. And sometimes the results are not what we expected. But going back and following on the methods, is it reproducible? What are we learning? So I would submit to you, it's very important, and you all know this, to really understand the data, and the data is truly king. The area where I sometimes struggle is on the emotion. So sometimes I really believe in a technology or something, and I'm emotionally invested. Oh, I love the team, oh, I love the idea, I love this, or I hate this, and sometimes that can cloud your judgment. So I submit to you, focus on the data, and always have a gauge of how much emotion you're putting into it. And thirdly, at the end of the day, for those of us on the nonprofit side, certainly, this is a business. And so you may have the data, you may have the vision, you may have something, but it may be because of funding or financing or corporate BS or something that things may not go the way you think. So as a scientist who's become a businessman, when I look at things, I always try to keep in mind all three. And I personally try to self-check my emotion, because that's the one that I sometimes will get in trouble with. The ability to ask for help. So imagine you're in an organization reporting to your boss, he or she, and they're busy, you're busy, and they come by and they say, how was your day, how are things going? And naturally you want them to feel good and comfortable, so you go, things are great, things are on track, and maybe after a little time you realize the project has a different scope, or you're a little bit behind in the timeline, or you have some surprising results. So I give the advice that when you're in that situation, not to be afraid to ask for help, and to do so early. Because if you don't do that, you may go down a certain pathway, and that issue, whether it's a budget or quality or a timeline, may be hard to correct. So think about the ability to ask for help and recognize that in your coworkers. I always admire when people are struggling and they're not afraid to put up their hand and go, hey Sanjay, I know you wanted this done by such and such date, but I don't understand it, I need help. So think about that in terms of your career. Are you able to ask for help? Are you able to do so early? And my last and perhaps most important slide is the concept of mentorship, maybe the most powerful word in the English language. Certainly in academia, it's something that's very well understood and used. I leave you with the idea of find a mentor, be a mentor. That's where the greatest learning comes from. That's where the greatest experiences come from. I've been privileged to have many great mentors in my career, and I also try to be a mentor to many people. So I leave you with the idea of find a mentor, be a mentor. Thank you for your time, and thank you for learning a little bit about our company.